Welcome to the Real Estate Masters Podcast, where we interview the top names in the real estate game. If you want to grow your real estate business, see more podcasts, or get free resources, go to www.remcommunity.com. The only podcast that allows you to directly connect with the guests and many of the highest level names in the real estate game.
You are in for a treat with our next guest. Do me a favor, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and don't forget to go to remcommunity.com to connect with some of the highest level real estate professionals in the United States through our community and through our high level masterminds. Let's go.
All right, welcome to today's show. We have Greg Helbeck on the line. Greg is a new generation of real estate investor. Typically, the investors we have on here are closer to my age. We got a young buck on the show. He is doing deals in New York, California, the Midwest. He's got his own podcast as well, and he is the king of cold calling and follow-up as well as many other things. So I'm glad to have Greg on the show. How you doing, buddy?
Tony, how you doing, man? Greetings from San Diego, about 20 minutes north of you right now. How's everything going today?
I know we're far away, but so close.
I know, man. Man. Well, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm happy to be a guest on the show, man. We've been connected for a while now. It's good to hop on here.
Yeah, we met a couple of years ago and have kind of been in the same groups and ran around in the same circles and connected on Facebook a little bit and whatnot. So it's good to reconnect with you again face to face. So tell us how you got started, what's going on with you, and where you got, I guess, where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So Greg Helbeck, I got started. Oh man, long story short is I was playing hockey. I was 20 years old at the time. I was 19. I was super young. And I was trying to get to the NHL, Tony, and it did not work out. And I was devastated because that's all I wanted to do. I thought that was the way I was going to get wealthy. And I had to kind of accept the reality that I wasn't going to play in the NHL. Anyway, I went back, moved back in with my parents like a loser. And, and I was like, I got to figure this out. I had no college at the time. My parents made me go to community college, and I was super kind of like defeated. And I remember going to community college, and I was like trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do with my life? I want to like do something special, right? Like not just be like everyone else. And I started reading personal development books, got into the whole thing, and ended up, long story short, my friend got a postcard in the mail, and he sent me a picture of the postcard and said, real estate seminar in town. And I went to the seminar, and they talked about, I was the youngest guy in there by far, I was 20 years old. And they're like, you could flip properties with no money. You just need to find motivated sellers and lock the deals up, and you can use someone else's money and flip them. And I was like, I can do that. Went out, took all that stuff literally. And I was like, I'm going to get rich in 2 months. Took me 9 months to get my first property. And I remember I made a $5,000 with a $1,000 wholesale fee. And then from there kind of stumbled my way into like 3 or 4 properties. And I got all right at marketing. Like I was really consistent, but I had no like idea of like running a real business or like having like campaigns or an ad budget or anything like that. I had no idea how to I had no ability to close. So I did a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, but I made some money. Eventually, I was at a point where I was kind of at a crossroads. I was spending a lot of money in marketing. I was not getting a good return, and I had to really, and I had some experience at this point. Like I wasn't brand new. And I said, I need to go into a market, because I was living in New York, where that area is a tough place for a newbie to get started, because you have to deal with attorneys, and there's very, very expensive, and you have to put down huge deposits. So for a newbie, that's a very hard market. It's kind of like San Diego. And I said, I need to go virtual, and I need to see if it's easier in another area. So I literally, like kind of out of my you-know-what, was like, I'm going to go into Texas, and I'm going to learn how to do cold calling. And I'm going to cold call properties that I think have the best chance of being deals, because I did a deal and I made $15,000, and it was a vacant house with back taxes. So I said, what if I just find lists of vacant houses with back taxes in Texas? Long story short, that ended up working out like 3 years ago, really, when cold calling wasn't a thing. I was cold calling people in Texas when it wasn't popular. And that's really what put me on the map. I started doing like 3 to 5 houses a month, like over the phone, virtually, making like $20,000 to $40,000 profits per deal, because I was closing at that point. And that really took my business off, man. And then ever since then, I've been I haven't been a high volume guy. We're doing like 15, 20 a month, but I've always been consistently knocking out anywhere from like 2 to 5 properties a month with really healthy profit margins. And I've evolved from more of a wholesaler to now just an investor. I'll rehab, I'll do rentals, I'll do wholesaling. And yeah, that's kind of the backstory on me, man.
Yeah, one of the cool things that when we met a couple of years ago that I saw is you were doing the cold calling,
Yeah.
and for me, I had a large staff, a lot of employees, and I was like, pretty jealous that you were just like a one-man show,
Yeah.
doing the phone calls, no overhead. I mean, pretty much no overhead. And I'm like, that's pretty sweet, I mean, there's obviously a good size to both of them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's cool. So you got started cold calling. That's like where it happens, man. That's like utilizing resources and just beating this because that's not easy, man. Like
No.
calling people and getting told no and probably hung up on and screw
Yeah.
you and how did you get my phone number? I imagine you got a lot of that,
Oh
right?
man, it's just you, especially in like NY and CA, man. You're gonna get rejected, but that's what builds that entrepreneurial that grit, man. Like you got to have that pig-headed persistence and doing that and learning how to get rejected. I learned that very young, which I'm thankful for. It has allowed me as I've gotten into like bigger deals and things like that, like to not get as kind of stunned when things don't work out and kind of getting used to rejection a little bit. So it was a great foundation to get started. And cold calling, like you said, is a great way where, a lot of people, they have big teams and that's great and it works. I was kind of like, how do I like, cause at the time I had no resources. I'm like, I need to be lean and mean. I need to be profitable. And if I have a couple bad months, like I need to be able to still be in business. So like, yeah, I need to keep my overhead low. And at the time it was like, let's cold call. And because the objective is get leads, right? So like, how do we get these leads and how much does it cost? And from there, it's like, how do we build out our marketing systems? And yeah, man, it was a leap of faith because I'll tell you what, Tony, I was on the brink of being in a real bad situation if I didn't get into cold calling because I was running out of money and it was not cool, man. It was not cool, especially because, I wasn't really established yet. So I had, it was tough, but it was a good learning lesson for sure.
But I think most of us entrepreneurs have been there where we
Yeah.
kind of get backed against the wall in some
Yep.
respect. And one thing I found, I mentioned this the other day on a call that like, man, anytime I've been in a really tough spot at the time it really sucks. Like you feel like so defeated and you feel so down. But there's always, I mean, there's so many different ways to say it, but like there's always a silver lining and there's always another door that opens. There's always something good that
Yeah.
comes out of that. For you, like almost running out of money was like shit, I gotta do something, like get on the
Dude.
phone and do something that
Yeah,
doesn't
man.
cost me money, right?
Big time.
Yeah. So
It was time.
yeah, and then before the call or before we started recording, you mentioned kind of evolving and being a little bit smarter with the deals. I think basically
Yeah.
maximizing the profit on each deal. So kind of tell us about that, how you went from
Yes.
just wholesaling to other things that you're doing as well.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because this is something I like to preach now when I can on the internet. Because when I started, Tony, I think everyone, gets started. They see a lot of guys online who have great information, but they're always teaching assign the contract, get a cash buyer. And I've found that business model, if you do it as your primary business, it can have challenges because number one, there are some deals that if you assign it, it can be problematic. At least I don't know, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but there are some properties where if I were to assign that contract, it would have been a problem with the seller, or I would have had to rely on someone else. So I started to look at myself as I had a little bit of savings saved up from a lot of properties. I said, well, what if I just, and another thing was I was looking at the people I was selling these properties to, and I was seeing what they were doing. They weren't doing a lot, and they were making 3, 4, 5x what I was making on an assignment. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is the same lead. I mean, I could have just bought this myself. So eventually I started realizing if I closed on these properties and took title and either renovated the property or did like a wholesale, which is when you're just cleaning it out, basically listing on the MLS, I could essentially make 2 to 4 times more money on the same exact lead without having to do another deal. So I started doing these deals where I would close on the really good deals and, resell them. And, but if I was either renovating or wholesaling, I was making so much more profit, like net profit on that same lead that if I were to just wholesale it, like I would have made 10 grand, but I closed on it and did a renovation and made 45. And yeah, it took a little bit longer, but still it wasn't that much harder because in my opinion, getting the deal is the most important part. So my point of that is like, if you're watching the show and you're new, start to look at yourself as an investor, not just a wholesaler. If you are a wholesaler, right? Like look at yourself as like, I'm a problem solver. I'm going to, do whatever I need to do to try to maximize the profit on this property and solve the customer's problem at the same time. And when you do that, you're going to start to realize, like, some properties, if you wholesale, might not make any sense. But if you close on them, you can make twice the amount of money or 3 times the amount of money, essentially with the same lead. And you can ultimately, work less and make more, even though it's kind of cliche, but it's true. Like I have countless amounts of deals. If you want to go through a case study or two, where like, if I did not close on that property, I would have left, 40 grand on the table all day long. And that's a lot of money when you really look at it, like, to your bottom line. I mean, you want to maximize your leads. And once I shifted my mindset from just being a wholesaler to being an investor, it absolutely changed my income and, the way I look at everything now. Like, you have to have that different perspective if you want to really maximize your success in all your marketing.
Yeah, and there's obviously pros and cons to both. You wholesale, it's quick money. You can turn it. You don't have to manage. You have to raise money and hire contractors and go with that whole thing. But if you, like, I'm a rehabber too. Like my team rehabs. Like, I love it because I can make 5 grand on a wholesale deal, or I can make 20 to 50 grand rehabbing the property. So for me, it totally makes sense. But not only that, I mean, I've been doing it a long time, but like, once you build a process and system for it, you haven't, like, I've got investors I can throw deals to all day long and I get them funded in a couple of days. I've got my sister that manages all the projects. I've got contractors that I've built over the last 20 years. We can just throw them in there and get rehabs done in 30 to 45 days. So, it could be really tough in the beginning to do those rehabs, but you do them smart and build a process and systems. They become a lot easier over time, and you can make 4 to maybe 10 times the amount of money that you do on a wholesale deal.
That's the key there with the rehabs. You need to have a good team on the ground. And if you're doing it in your market, or if you're doing it like I've done it remotely, I've done most of them remotely. And you just hit a great point. You got to have a team, whether you're JVing with somebody in another area that you're not familiar with, or like in my area in New York, I have a project manager who does projects for me. I have private lenders I've built relationships with. And the most important thing, and you know this obviously, is you got to know that market. If you're going to close on a property, you need to know what's going on. You need to know the days on market. You need to know the area. You need to know the sub-market. Because if you're wholesaling, it's a little easier to do that virtually because you're just trying to find a buyer to take the contract over, which, you just need to know of buyers. But if you're going to start taking your money and investors' money and hard money, and you're going to be closing, you need to become an expert in your specific market you're going to do that in, because if you don't, you could put yourself and other people at a big financial risk. So you need to really know that market. But once you know that market and you have some experience, it's a great way to kind of evolve, as a real estate entrepreneur, getting into the actual purchasing of the properties and renovating, for sure.
So tell me about your evolution. So, like, for me, it seems like a lot of people get into real estate and it's a means to an end. They get in there, they're hungry, they do deals, they make money, and then, it may be fulfilling, it may be not, but either way, they typically find something else that they want to do later.
Yeah.
That's either more fulfilling or more, I don't know, more sexier, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you've started your podcast, you're doing some other things. So tell me your evolution and transition to some of the other things that you're doing.
Totally, man. So that's a great question. And it really, I haven't been in the game for 20 years like you, so I have a lot to learn, but I've been doing it for like 5 years now. And I've done it every day, right? Every day for 5 years, you learn some things. And I really started to realize that, a lot of it is personal development, right? Like, the better I became as a person, as a marketer, as a salesperson, as a leader to some people who work with me, the more money I ended up making and the more success I ended up having. So I started to realize, like, the more I can work on myself, even though it's cliche, the better everyone will do, right? So I figured, the best way to get is to give. You always got to give before you get. So I ended up starting a podcast last year, just really for the purpose of providing goodwill to the marketplace, number one, and number two, being able to use it as a networking tool to connect with people that I've always wanted to connect with, and help them out by getting them some exposure on the show, and in exchange get some value for myself and from some listeners. So I ended up starting the show, paved the way, and really had no idea what I was doing. Like, had no clue. Didn't even know how to start a podcast. I had to look it all up on the internet. And from there, I've been able to really, use that show as a vehicle to number one, raise some money for some real estate deals, and also kind of get into, some stuff I have, that I'm working on, some projects and then some information stuff. and really, found that I guess the teaching aspect of it, not necessarily real estate, like the stuff that I'm kind of rolling out is more like productivity stuff. But I think if you can grow as a person, right, whether you're in real estate or you're any business, you're gonna essentially you're gonna be more successful because you're gonna become the person that is worth the money you want to make, or whatever the case is. So I've always used personal development as a way to grow as an entrepreneur, and the podcast is a way for me to help others, achieve the success they want to achieve. So if you were to tell me when I started out, hey, you're going to start a podcast and maybe have a couple information things, I would have said, I don't know, man, I don't think that's really for me. But as time goes on, you start to, realize, hey, there's maybe an opportunity here. Maybe I can kind of be a little bit different than everyone else in terms of like the content. And man, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work. And, I think that I made a mistake starting where I didn't really have an objective for the show. It was just kind of like, let's put content out there. But now that I'm a little bit more strategic with it, and I have some more kind of goals for the show, it's a little bit more motivating. And I also have my team, a couple VAs kind of put the show together for me. So I think as entrepreneurs, we're always kind of looking for the next thing to chase and take down. And, we all kind of have that shiny object syndrome. And I think it's definitely a blessing because it always makes us curious and hungry. But sometimes it can be a curse because, we tend to kind of go all over the place. But I think if you have a couple things that you're working on at once, that's definitely manageable. But there's some people I know, I have some friends who have like 10 projects going on. I'm like, how do you do all that, man? I'm like, I have 2 to 3 things going on. I'm losing my mind. So yeah, it's always interesting, man. It's really always interesting, but I'm always looking to grow and learn, as I mature.
Yeah, and I over the last 20 years, I've chased so many rabbits, especially
Yeah,
the first
right.
10 to 15 years, man. I was chasing so many rabbits, and I was that guy even probably a year and a half ago. When I was building the house, I was just, we were just talking
Yeah.
about it. I was
Oh,
doing
yeah, sounds like
masterminds around the country, and then I got pregnant with a baby, and then we ended up moving out of our place. I mean, we had like 100 things going on, and it was like crazy. And so ever since then, like in the last year and a half, I'm like, just like you said, I got to be way more intentional with what I do. Like, is
yes.
there a true intention behind it? And I just mentioned this earlier to someone that if I take something on, it's like, it's got to be scalable to the point to where it doesn't take any more energy for me
Mhm.
and it brings positive energy, because flipping houses and stuff can really suck your energy
Yes.
especially if you're doing the wrong things in it, right?
Yeah.
So like, you know, I'm sure you've been in it 5 years now. You probably learned this already that there are things that really raise your energy level and you love
Yeah.
doing. And then there's things in your business that you feel like I need to do and I'm the best at that once you get rid of them, you're like, holy, actually, I'm not the best at it. And I freaking hated doing that. I feel so much better not doing it. Right. Have
Project
you experienced that?
management.
What's that?
Project management.
I know,
Managing
right?
yes. Hate it.
Oh, and I
Oh,
used to think that I had to do it because I needed to be in control, and it's like
oh my
I
God.
haven't managed a project in 5 years, and I don't ever want to do it again, ever,
It is. Yeah, man. And the thing is, some people love doing it,
for
and
sure.
more power to them. Like I have my project manager, loves it, hates marketing, loves managing rehabs, and it's a great synergy. But it's such a good point you made there because if you spend your whole day doing things that you hate, even if you own your own business, you're going to not if, but when you burn yourself out, you're going to be like super frustrated. But if you can just figure out the things that you do that are number one intentional, but they give you energy, you don't even feel like you're working. Like it's like, oh, I'm creating whatever, I'm doing this today, but it doesn't even feel like work because I want to do it. And that's a big point to make because I see a lot of people, especially like if they're in the real estate business, like they think sometimes they even have to fix the houses, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to really grow your real estate business, you need to get good at doing the things that matter and then have other people do them for you. And you always got to look at like what's the best use of your time. Like if I put in X amount of time, what could the potential outcome be on that time? And like you kind of said earlier, it's got to be exponential. It's got to be something that's scalable where you have a high, ROI or not ROT, I guess, in this situation. And you got to be specific with that because in the beginning, I guess new investors sometimes they have a tough time figuring that out because they just want to make money. But once you have some deals under your belt and some income coming in, like you start to get like, okay, a little bit more strategic on things. and you really look at that 80-20 principle and try to apply it. And that's something I try to do, man, like using the 80-20 principle and having the discipline to really apply that, the 20% that matter consistently can be tough to do sometimes.
Have you heard of traction and visionary versus integrator?
Yes. Yeah. Gino Wickman. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you're a big book guy. You do reviews all the time on Facebook. But yeah, man, that was an eye opener for me. So that, you know, for those of you who don't know about that, it's visionary and integrator. So visionary, like Greg and I can tell you right now, are visionaries. It's like we know where we want to go. We know what we want to do. We have this big vision. We have all these big goals, and we don't like putting all the details together. So we need integrators to go in there, clean up our crap that we've messed up, get it all together, package it up, implement it, manage the projects, you know, all that good stuff underneath that. People don't actually, that picture back there that you see, that people don't see that picture back there, the other one, the iceberg. So it's got, it's got all that underneath. Like that's the integrator.
Yeah.
It's managing all that crap underneath. We're on top, just like, hey guys, you know, just
hey,
we're the face of all of it, right?
Totally.
So,
That's a good point, man. That's a good book where he talks about that, because I didn't know, like, I didn't understand, because before I heard of that book that you brought up, Traction, I was always like, man, I'm good at getting stuff going, but like the actual day to day, like I'm just, it doesn't give me fulfillment. Like I remember when I first started, Tony, it was like bandit signs. Like I knew how to put them out. I knew what to do. I knew why I should put them out. But the actual mechanics, I'm like, I don't need to be doing this. I can have someone else do this. And having that, some people are the opposite. They like the mechanical and the structure. And like my girlfriend's an engineer. She's very analytical, which is good. And, she's very in the details and like, I'm like, I'll just get it going. We'll figure out the marketing and then I'll just, whatever, we'll change it. And she's
ready, fire, aim is what I call that.
That is Greg, ready, fire, aim, Helbeck, man. That's like,
and actually here's something you can take away, and hopefully the listeners will too. So like, to me, it's like, I love starting that first 10 to 15% of the project.
Yes.
Hand it off, check in the middle a little bit, and then come to me at the end and I'll critique it and make that little change, and then we'll get it out there, whatever it is,
I love it.
Like right now I'm creating a course. I put the outline together. I'm going to have to record a lot of it, but I gave the slides and my vision of the slides to somebody. They're putting all the slides together and making it all pretty, so I can just go in there and record it. It's like,
I just did that. Yeah. I literally just did what you said, like verbatim on Fiverr. Like I just was working on that before we got on this call. What you just said.
People think that they have to manage all the little details to make sure they are right. And don't get me wrong, you have to inspect what you expect, but at the same time, like, if I can only be responsible for 10% of anything that's going on at any point in time, I'm happy with that.
100%. You cannot have that micromanaging mindset. That was a great example with the course slides. Like you knew exactly what content you wanted to put out, why you're putting it out, how it will help people, but you don't need to get good at the slides and the design and all that. Like there's people out there who do that for a living. They love it. Like you go on fiverr.com. I just did what you said and had my, freelancer put together these fancy slides. The logo, I didn't create the logo. I didn't I gave him everything that he needs to be successful. And then he'll send me the file and I'll look at it and we'll probably stamp it off as approval. So you got to get used to doing that because you can spend all day doing things that will drain your energy. Like, for me, it's like graphic design. I'm like, I don't know I don't even know what to do. I'm like, all right, just hire someone to do it, but I can put
I used to sit for like a full day and try and freaking 15, 20 years ago when I was doing the bit, I'd try and like do all these things and I spent like half a day doing it. And I'm like, but of course there wasn't Fiverr and Upwork and all those back then, but still it's like, I could have found somebody. Yeah. So how much did you pay for those slides, if you don't mind me asking, to be done?
I think I paid him like $200 or $225. I negotiated him a little bit because he anchored me pretty high. And I was like, man, like, I get it, but I how am I supposed to pay it? And I got him down eventually. But, they're really professionally designed and I can connect with the guy.
So you already got it back?
Yeah, they're awesome. And then I sent them another thing earlier. The course I'm making has got like a worksheet that goes with the slides. So like the design has to be congruent. I think he charged me like $150 for them, for all like the professional designs. And I'll take it, because I know that, if I can pay someone $200 or $250 and that, let's say that were to take me 10 hours of my time since I don't know what I'm doing, like you got to always look at what is your time worth. And like, it's not necessarily like I have to pay this person X. Like I'm going to pay them X, and in exchange, I don't have to worry about it. And as long as I do a reasonable job, I'm cool with it, and they're cool with it, and everyone wins. But yeah, man, Fiverr and Upwork they've been super helpful for my business, because you don't have to take on that, if you don't want to, you don't have to have that payroll, things like that. You can use people, especially in the beginning, that can do what you need them to do, but you can only use them on a contractual basis, So that's, if you're an entrepreneur listening and you don't want to hire employees, go on Upwork, go on Fiverr, and put out job posts and get some experience kind of delegating things. Because in the beginning, it's really awkward when you start delegating stuff you've never done it. You're like, what the heck? Like, I'm the boss. Like, this is weird. But over time, you're like, it's like anything. You get used to it.
Yeah, it probably would have taken me 2 months to do those slides, because it's quite a few slides, and
Oh, yeah.
there's so many other things going on. That's like, man,
Yep.
he's going to be done with them next week, and I'll be able to
Exactly.
record what I need to. So
That's it, man.
Yeah.
And it's that 20% for sure, man. It's tough. I mean, there's still some things that I have trouble delegating, and you just gotta, you gotta just realize, like, at the end of the day, like, the best use of your time is working on the things that bring the most value to that organization, which usually has to do with, like, the vision and make sure the marketing is productive and things like that, capital raising. Yeah.
Cool, man. So I have a $10,000 question. So if you had $10,000, or if someone else had $10,000 in their hand and you had to advise them how to spend it, how would you advise them to spend it to get their best return?
$10,000. Is this a real estate or just in general?
Could be anything, man. You name it.
Man, so this is what I would do. I would take the 10 grand before I would spend a cent of it. I would go figure out specifically what my target was that I wanted to achieve. All right. I'd figure out, what do I want to achieve? Like, whether it's a business goal, or it's probably a business goal. So I want to make X amount of dollars by X amount of day. Let's say 100 grand in the next 90 days. And I'd get very specific on that, like, before I spent a penny. And then I would ask myself a second question. I'd say, who is somebody that could help me get to this number by this day? I would offer them $1,000 for their time for an hour. I could probably do it in an hour. I'd offer them $1,000, and I would ask them a set of specific questions on how I can get that $100,000 within 90 days. I'd get their answers, and then I would also ask them, how can I do this with a budget of $9,000 now, because I just paid you $1,000? And I'd have them tell me what they would do, and then I would implement exactly what they told me to do, given the budget that I told them, and given the specificity of that goal. And that's what I would do. Now, if you were to ask me this 5 years ago, I would have said, go buy 10,000 bandit signs and put them out. But now I would be more strategic. So yeah, get specific on what you want. Find out who has what you want. Pay them for their time, because when you pay attention, right? Like, if you pay someone $1,000 for their time, and assuming they're credible, they're going to give you really good advice. Like, take the advice seriously, especially just because you just paid for it. And then the more specific questions you ask, the better answers you're going to get. And then, like in my example, if I have $9,000 left over and I told the person I need 9 grand of funds to get that goal achieved, how do I make it work with 9,000? They're going to give you a really good answer. And I would go implement exactly to the penny what they told me. I wouldn't deviate. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't say, oh, that doesn't make sense. I would just do what they told me to do. And I would send them an email every week, updating them on my progress, so they see that I'm serious. And I bet you if you did that, you'd get you 100 grand for sure.
Dude, I wish I would have known that 50. So I think you're 25, right?
25, yeah.
So 15 years. So I was 25, 15 years ago, and it took me until about 2010. So I was probably 30, maybe even closer to 32 years old before I really learned the lesson that you just said, and that is, whatever it is you want to achieve, go out there and find someone that can guide you in that right direction. It could be a coach, it could be a mastermind group, it could be a mentor. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, 10 years of my business, I put my head down and I was afraid to ask for help. Like, I was afraid to ask questions of anybody, because I didn't want to look stupid. To be like, people to say, hey man, you're running this business, you don't know like how to do that. And it's like, no man, you got it. Like, you got to look stupid to find the answers of what you need, man. So super cool that you learned that so early in life and so early in your career, man. That's phenomenal.
It's, you know what? It's something that, like, I would have not given you that answer even 2 years ago, man. I would have been like, go out and put your nose to the grindstone, which is, you got to work. Work is definitely inevitable, but I wasn't specific on what I wanted, and I wouldn't like I wasn't really strategic with things. I always have been like very hardworking, but like you can work really hard, do the wrong thing, and be really burned out, right? Like that's a realistic thing in entrepreneurship. So you need to get specific on what you want, and then you got to find out, like you said, who's got what you who has what you want, and how do you earn the right to get some of their time to ask specific questions and then go implement. Like, I think being a content producer now, like with a podcast, I look at I look at the production of things from a different lens because I used to just listen to podcasts. Now that I produce them, I'm like, wow, like this is interesting because I want to make sure that the value I put out is someone is going to receive that. So I have to make sure the information is really good. So I would see how people's perspectives were. And it really just kind of taught me a lot about like information and how to approach people and things like that. But yeah, you gotta go to the experts, like especially when you start new stuff. Like I'm starting the internet marketing thing, and like I didn't know what I was doing, but Frank Kern joined his inner circle, and now I know a thing or two about internet stuff, and I'm excited. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel for sure.
Cool, man. What else do you want people to know about you or know about your business or any kind of nuggets you can share?
Yeah. Oh, here's one. Definitely the first point is like if you're in the real estate business specifically, like once you get past your first couple deals and you have a little bit of money in the bank, because you can do that relatively quickly in the real estate game, look at yourself as an investor and really, so number one, don't just try to do one exit strategy. Look at the deal from a couple different angles and see what makes the most sense for you. And the second thing that I can tell your listeners that I hope they can get value from is that depending on where they are, the more like you get paid in direct proportion of the value that you bring to the marketplace. So like if you're not at the certain income level you're at that you want to be at, it's probably because you lack some skills that need to be acquired in order to provide the value to then get the money. So if you can work on yourself to become more valuable and acquire key skills and have an understanding on those skills, you're going to be able to then make more money because you're more valuable. And this is the best part. You're going to be able to teach people on your team how to do those skills, and they can replicate those skills on your behalf. So you don't have to be always kind of in the day to day. So you got to learn skills. They're very important. And you need to, one more point I would say is, there's been times when I've been in the weeds on deals where you have to have that persistence. I've had challenging properties where I've been in situations where like I didn't know what to do. I had a lot of money on the street, and being persistent and being like stubborn on the outcome that you want to achieve is inevitable. It's vital. So you need to be able to persist, because not if, but when those obstacles come up, like you got to know like that is the normal. You got to pass the persistence test, and the feeling that you're going to have on the other side of the mountain is totally worth whatever you got to do to go through that, persisting time. So you got to be persistent. You got to have skills, and look at yourself as an investor, not just a, wholesaler or whatever you are. And if you do those consistently, you'll definitely have some success for sure.
Yeah, man. So you said 5 years ago when you were getting into it, like you ran out of money, you were like in a tough spot. Mm-hmm. So looking back 5 years ago, if you knew where you were now, would you believe it?
Oh man, it's crazy you say that, because I wrote a little letter to myself, like a yellow or a January letter. I think Sean Terry talked about it one time. And my mom found it in my old house where I used to live before I moved to California. And it was 80% accurate from like and at the time when I wrote that.
You did know it. So you did know where you were going.
I did know where I was going, but it is like, at the time though, I had no idea how I was going to get there. Like I was broke, just getting started in real estate, was in college, wanted to move to California, lived in snowy, crummy New York. And, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but like, I had that belief, like I was going to do it eventually. And I'm not kidding. When I read that letter, I had like the chills, because it was like 80% accurate. Like,
dude, I did the same thing.
It's scary.
Same story. I went to Tony Robbins' business mastery seminar, paid 10 grand to go to this thing. Cause I don't know why I went, but anyway, so it was like 2012, I want to say. And same thing. He had you write a yellow letter to yourself. He shipped it to you. Like, I think it was like a year later. So I got the letter. It wasn't quite like I'd accomplished some of the things, but then I read it 2 years after that. 2 years after that, same thing. Moved to San Diego, met my wife.
Yeah, same.
Automated my business where I didn't have to be in all the weeds all the time, dude. That's super powerful. So you talk about intention, man. If you put that on paper,
yeah,
you like, even if you don't resonate on it every day, like you said, you wrote that, but I don't know, did you look at it every day? Because for me, I saw
Oh,
it like
no,
two or
man.
three
I just
times,
put it in
but
the drawer.
subconsciously or the universe or whatever just
Yeah,
somehow
man.
figures out how to make it happen.
That's it, man. You got to be intentional. That was a great point. And you got to just take action like every day. Like, there's so many things that are out of your control in business, like other people, the marketplace, but if you can just focus on what you have control over every single day and get specific on those things and just do the things you have control over time, it'll all work out. You just got to focus on the things you have control over, because I have like 15 properties going on right now. There's tons of fires, but I can only control a select group of things, and I can sleep well at night because if I just do my best to focus on the controllable every day, over time, it will all work out over the long game. And that's really the best you can do, is what you have control over. Like, I can't control the lawyers and all this craziness going on, but at the end of the day, I can focus on myself. I can control myself. And like you said, I can be intentional. And if you're in it for the long game, man, you can do some really cool stuff. And it's crazy how those like yellow letters come to life. It's like scary. You're like, what the heck? This is nuts.
The last point I'll say on that is Tony Robbins says you overestimate what you can do in a year, but you underestimate what you can do in a lifetime. So if you look at like, it's kind of hard to look at things from a year period because, I mean, a lot of good things can happen.
Yeah.
But then if you look at it from a 5-year standpoint, it's huge, like the amount of change that you make. So if you're in a tough spot, if you're not where you want to be, just look at it as, I mean, you probably don't have to wait 5 years, but you're going to look back, 5 years later or, previous and be like, why was I sweating the small stuff? Why did I care that much that I wasn't where I wanted to be? It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And that's it. It's that like 5 years is a huge amount of time that you can make progress. But like I said, even a couple of years, like if you're just intentional every day and you get after it, it's that compounded effort every day. You're working towards something you want. And you let that compound over a year, lifetime, you can just absolutely make startling changes, and you will not recognize yourself as the person you were 5 years ago. Like, you're like, oh my God, like I've changed because every day I'm not saying me specifically, but like you yourself have changed because you simply get specific on what you want. You do the work every day. You realize you got to focus on the controllable, you're persistent, and you grow. And next thing you know, man, you're just onward and upward, just evolving.
Absolutely. Well, cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time and your insight. I just love what you're doing, man. Young buck, on fire, wanting to take over the world. I remember being 25 and wanting to take over the world, man. I kind of still do, but not really, because I have kid and other stuff going on. But no, good stuff, man. Anything else? Any last words you wanna share?
Oh man, that's just everyone out there listening. Like, you gotta, listen to this episode more than once. That's another thing I see. Like, I'm a big reader. I put a lot of book reviews out, but like I read a lot of the books over and over and over again. If someone were to audit my Instagram and Facebook and like they'd see this dude's reviewing the same book more like 4 or 5 times, and I'm doing that on purpose because you gotta go deep, not wide. So people listening to the show, even though it's a free podcast, pretend you just paid Tony and I $5,000 to listen to our insight. Like, pretend Tony and I are at lunch right now.
Actually, they should take your advice. They should pay us each $5,000. That way they take it more seriously, right?
Exactly. So pretend you did that. And like, we're holding everything back. We got nothing, this is just like how we would talk if we went out to dinner, right? So take this stuff seriously, listen to it more than once, and really find out the 1 or 2 things that you can pull out of this call today that you can implement and do consistently. And if you pretend like you paid $5,000 to listen to this interview, you will value it much more and you will get more results out of it. So be specific, listen to it more than once, and pretend you paid us $5,000 to listen to this call, and you'll have more quote unquote skin in the game and you'll get more value out of it ultimately. So I hope your listeners got tremendous value from this, and it's always been an honor to know you, and really happy to be a guest on your show.
Sweet, man. We need to not wait 2 years to get together.
I know. It's so much stuff has happened too. I mean, we live basically neighbors, so we'll go for a hike pretty soon here. Once this pandemic starts to get even easier, we'll hike over in Point Loma by where you used to live.
Sounds good, man. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. Thanks for adding value to our listeners.
Hey, no sweat, man.
All right, man. Talk again soon.
See ya.
See you, bud.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. Now go to www.remcommunity.com to connect with today's guest, see our high-level masterminds, and to get free resources. Don't forget to share this with a friend and leave us a 5-star review. We'll see you on the next episode.